righteousness. Where does He lead me to? To the waters of reflection.
Yes.
Where my soul remembers who I am. Because we have forgotten. I preached in the church in South Africa once, and they were singing a song just before I came up to preach. Oh Lord, remember me. And I got up and I said, guys, we've got it all wrong. It's not God who has to remember us. He cannot forget. He cannot get you out of His mind. He has come to restore and to revive our memory of Him. We started looking last night at the word righteousness, tzadok, the wooden beam in the scale of balances. And we saw how the righteousness of God, the glory of God, is all that could possibly balance that scale. The image and likeness of God, perfected in your creation. God did not enter into His rest because He felt rather exhausted. His Sabbath is the celebration of perfection. He cannot add to what He completed. You see, when the Sabbath shadow was introduced in the law, where God said on the seventh day, thou shalt do no work. What was God saying? He says, I want you to celebrate prophetically the fact that you cannot add to perfection. At least take one day a week. Remember, we're talking shadow language here. I'm not talking New Testament, I'm talking Old Covenant. Under the Old Covenant, prophetically, God said, I want to give you a day. And on this day, I want you to remember the perfection that I celebrate in my Sabbath. God doesn't have two Sabbaths. He only has one rest. Because His rest was not founded on fragile Adam. His rest was founded on a perfect redemption. The Lamb that was slain before the foundation of the earth. There is a history larger than time to our salvation. Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forever. So when God told him on the seventh day, it's perhaps the most repeated commandment in the Old Testament. You can go look it up in your concordance and count them if you want to. On the seventh day, you shall do no work. We struggled with that as kids because our grandparents lived where we live now in Hermanus, and we would travel sometimes 2 days to get there because we lived far away from that beautiful town. And then we'd spend every year, we'd spend our Christmas holidays, which should be over December. We have different calendars for time and seasons than you have. So our Christmas holidays we go and spend with our grandparents in Hermanus. But Sundays, we were not allowed to catch fish or swim. And Sundays became a dreaded day. Total interruption to our holiday, our holy day. My elder brother, he's a missionary in the Ukraine today. He's been there for 15 years now, ministering in Russia and in Ukraine. And he was a wonderful fisherman. You know, he could just, the fish couldn't escape him. And then my father would eventually allow us on a Sunday to catch what we call little clipfish. They're in the small pools, low tide especially. We've got these small pools, and we've got a little short little line and a small little hook. Then you're allowed to catch them and immediately throw them back. So there was a bit of a compromise on the Sunday. But my brother, especially with low tide, you'll find lots of line that was broken off by previous fishermen that were fishing there, and he'll extend his little line and add a bit of a bigger hook. And when nobody's looking, he throws it into the real ocean. And the next minute, God blesses him with a beautiful fish, and he's pulling this fish, but while he's pulling it, he's crying because he knows he's going to have to throw it back. And he would say, but Dad, we're not allowed to swim on Sunday. They swim on Sundays, so we've got to punish them. And here we've pictured God. He's this big old spoil sport. And we had it all wrong. The Sabbath is a celebration that found its perfection not in another day that we've added to the holy days, but in the person of Jesus Christ, who mirrors your perfection. Imagine you inherit a Van Gogh painting. Priceless, priceless. Millions of US dollars cannot buy it. But you're not really into art. It's from some old great granddad. And you've got this piece. And you feel inspired one day to add a little touch to the canvas. And you've just painted your roof, so you've still got some leftover paint, and you think, man, today and you get bold. You know what you've just done?
Okay.
You've destroyed the original value. God says, no work! Because flesh cannot add to perfection. I mean, we thought God really risked it, imagine Abraham. Now, if you go and date this back, you'll find that in Abraham's day, all the men, by the time they were around about 30, 35 years old, they had a son. But Abraham's father, Terah, had Abraham when he was 70 years old. I mean, that was stretching it. So Abraham gets married. He turns 70. No child. He turns 75. Can you imagine how nervous this man's getting? He was trying to negotiate and says, listen, Abraham already, before God changed his name, even Abraham speaks of it, Abba, Father, Raham. It's a little bit bold. Because people ask questions, when you say, I'm a father of how many children? Turned 75. And God spoke the promise. And that promise carried the revelation of every nation's true identity. You see, Ishmael says one thing, a mixed system. A little bit of law, a little bit of grace. Let's add God. Let's add a little bit. Help God. Negotiate with Sarah first, but 75 years old, 25 years later, still no Isaac. And in the meantime, he has to introduce himself as Abraham. That's a Hebrew sentence. I am the father of a multitude of nations. Of the nations, it really says. Sarah, mother of princes and princesses. Her womb was dead. There was no flesh involved. The flesh could not produce. Because out of that dead tomb, Isaac was resurrected. Yes. We are celebrating resurrection life. There is no competition that our best effort offers as a substitute to what God perfected in Christ. Jesus did not come to win a few desperate votes for Christianity. That's right. He came to declare the blueprint image, the likeness of God in human form, but not as in a display window, not in a new set of compromised rules. Try and sin less from now on, or try not get caught at least. He came to display the truth. The most labeled sinners in society felt themselves drawn to him, irresistibly so. Why? Because they saw in him the truth about themselves, mirrored. In him they discovered that the life we lived was a lie. The life I lived yesterday was a lie. The truth about me that awakens the original life, the blueprint life, is awakened in him as in a mirror. In John 7 and verse 5, John writes that none of Jesus' brothers believed in him. I mean, they were cool with him with that first miracle. Remember when he turned the water into wine? And they thought, this is it, We are heroes. We are totally like celebrities now. Because we're related to the man who turns water into wine. But then he went and spoiled everyone's reputation when he plaited the whip. And he kicked over some money changers' tables in the house of God, in the temple. There's this very clear hint there that he lost his address. Remember when he said foxes have holes, birds have addresses, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. His mother and brothers, they were standing outside, and they sneaked in a little note, says, listen, you're neglecting your family. How did Jesus respond? He says, behold, my family. Because the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, is identified, is revealed in Him. In Matthew 16, Jesus asks perhaps the most important question in the whole book. The question boils down to, who is the Son of Man? He says it this way, he says, who do you say that I, the Son of Man, am? And they have their guesses. At least they could see that there's something prophetic about Him. Could be Elijah, could be a reincarnation of some of the great prophets. He's more than just a carpenter's son. And He's not happy with their answers, so He asks His disciples, He says, and who do you say that I am? By revelation, Simon says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. I love the way Jesus responds to him. Jesus didn't feel relieved and think, wow, Simon, you got it, bro. That's wonderful. Here's your certificate. The correct theological answer. The reason He came was to introduce us to ourselves again. Immediately He says, Simon, now that you know who I am, allow me to introduce you to you, Mr. Rock. Simon, son of Jonah, I say, you are rock. And upon this rock, I will build my ecclesia, says the Greek. You see, we have inherited through our translations English words that have drifted far away from the original meaning. So when we hear the word church, our minds go zzz, and we see all kinds of shapes and sizes of buildings and programs and denominations and banners, and we think that is church. The word ecclesia is